Hey there, welcome back to the show. This is Zoe Routh on the Future of Leadership. My question for you today is, how can we share the benefits of capitalism better? Let's find out. On Planet Human this week, guess what? Flying taxis are here. In China, two companies have been given approval to fly their passenger-carrying drones. Now, these things can go up to 130 kilometers an hour. And so in China, they're pressing go on this major innovation. And they're projecting that this technology, this industry will be worth about $270 billion by the end of this year. So that's pretty massive. On Planet Zoe this week, a couple things. I am back from my bushwalk. This is the first recording I've done since I completed my bushwalk, and it did not go as planned. The first week, we had to write off completely. My friend Mel turned up, and she had a major flu. She could barely walk. It was pretty bad. We did have conversations about, could I do that section of walking on my own? And after much discussion and teeth gnashing, we decided, no, let's not do it on my own because there are risks involved with that. And also, we set out to do the AWT together. So we had a week in Omeo resting and recuperating before heading out on week 2, where 2 other friends joined us. And the weather was wild and woolly. And it was pretty amazing. And at the end of the day, though, it was all over pretty quickly. And though I'd been away for 2 weeks, I could have done with more bush and more time out there and hiking. And it's just making me look forward to the next one next year, which I have started planning and looking at already. The other things that are happening on Planet Zoe is power games. Here's the book. Very exciting. We are launching on Kickstarter on the 19th of May. We're also running a giveaway to build enthusiasm and excitement for it. So if you share or comment about the book and the campaign and tag me, I will add you into the giveaway pool, if you like, and we will draw names on the 26th of May. And in the running for the giveaway is the electronic version of the book, the audiobook, and the electronic workbook, as well as the 22 sheets and handouts. So you can win the whole digital prize, which we are currently offering on the site. I think it's for $47. That's all up for grabs in the giveaway. If you become a backer of the campaign, and you can back for as little as $1, you will get double entries into the giveaway. So just by committing $1, you get 2 entries, twice as many chances to win the giveaway. So the link to the Kickstarter campaign is in the show notes. And if you tag me on any social media post about the book and the campaign, you go into the draw. I manually enter everybody, and at the end, I will use a mechanism to pick the winner. So that's all happening on Planet Zoe. What if we could collaborate better? In all the research and work that I'm doing with clients, as well as in my personal world, coming together to create an experience, a product, a process is hard. Working with other humans can be tricky business. There's 2 things I found in my research and experience that affect this going well or not so well. The first one is our individual emotional regulation. What I mean by that, as humans, we come with a whole bag of history and experiences and buttons that can be pressed by somebody else's comments or behavior or attitude. And yep, I am nearly 55 and I still have a bag of hot buttons as well. As I discovered on the recent bushwalk with my friends, I discovered that I really don't like being excluded. I have a huge sensitivity to that. And that's an earlier stage of leadership maturity sensitivity. At the stage of diplomat, one of the earliest stages of growth, being included and a sense of belonging is essential to our sense of safety. We know this from the work of psychological safety as well. If we're not included, then we can feel left out and we can feel at risk as a result of that. What does that look like in a contemporary scene? It can mean, did I get offered a cup of tea while my friends all got a cup of coffee? If no, I could feel excluded and left out and not considered. Yes, I am confessing to my emotional reactions to this small incident. It could mean I wasn't consulted in the decision making. It could mean I was excluded from being considered as an expert in my field on a particular topic. Yes, these are all real life sensitivities, my own. And I'm still processing how I showed up during the walk and during a lot of my leadership work as well. So when we become more aware of what our sensitivities are, it gets easier to get over them and get through them more quickly so we can collaborate better. Couple of ways to manage our collaboration better. One is to be aware of our sensitivities. The second one is to be aware of our leadership maturity journey and where we need to tidy up past issues. And the third thing is to get clear on decision-making protocols. And one aspect of our walk, we were kind of at a crunch time in our journey. We had a big day of walking, and then the weather came in. So it was quickly whipping on our waterproof jacket and pants, and the wind came sideways. It was epic. And we were walking fast to get out of the weather to get to our destination. And we had a choice to make. Do we soldier on and go a few Ks past our intended destination, which would set us up well for the next big day? So just get ahead of ourselves. Or do we just veer off track and bunker down and have an early mark? That was a conversation as the rain was coming sideways. We hadn't had lunch yet, and it was pushing 1:30 p.m., which if anybody who knows me well knows that that's the time the hangries come out. And we didn't have a decision-making protocol. So we winged the decision, which left a bitter aftertaste in our mouths as we got to the hut where we decided to stay and processed what happened. Was it a good decision? Was it a bad decision? How did we make the decision? And who had a role in the decision making? So we had a lot to unpack. And we could have avoided a lot of the tension that came around that had we established decision making protocols ahead of time. Yes, I teach this. And no, I did not do it for myself in a personal forum. Ah. I'm still learning as a leader. So setting up your decision-making protocols is one of the ways we can troubleshoot effective collaboration before we even get started. So what does that mean? It means what decisions will we make together? What kinds of decisions could be tricky? What factors do we need to consider? What is our process? Example, consult with each person. If there is maybe we have a democratic process, if it's a tie break, who gets to make the call? How will we debrief that afterwards? What are the factors to consider? Very simple conversation, could have taken 10 minutes at the beginning of our journey and saved us a lot of grief. Don't do that to yourself. Set up your decision-making protocols now. And that is my best tips for collaboration moving forward. It's tea time in the office kitchen. And my guest this week is Elle Griffin. Now, I am a fangirl of Elle. I've been following her Substack, reading her Substack for a while now. She is a brilliant writer, and she is the founder of the Elysian, or Elysian, I think is how you pronounce it, which is a writers' collective exploring the future of nation states, capitalism, and humanity. She is a big thinker, big picture thinker, and she has a new project, which she has crowdsourced with We Fund, I think it's called. And it is a book called We Should Own the Economy. And it's about pivoting or changing how we do capitalism so more of us benefit and reap the rewards of our efforts. It's a fascinating conversation and a fascinating book to come. So without further ado, here's Elle. Well, all the way from Tokyo, welcome to the show, Elle Griffin.
Thanks for having me.
I am thrilled to have you on the show. I've been a reader of your writing and participating in your Substack for special people for, I don't know, over 12 months now. And I've been really intrigued by the concepts that you explore and the way that you're approaching your writing and publishing and a lifestyle in general. So I think there's so much I want to dive into. And one of the things I know is that you're interested about doing things differently and doing publishing differently as a starting point, writing and publishing differently. And then through that, you've been exploring utopian worlds. And now you're raising money to do a book on the future of capital. So where did this all come from? How did this desire for doing things different begin?
I don't think I was actually setting out to do things differently. I was kind of more setting out to do things better. I worked as a writer and or an editor and a journalist for more than 10 years, and I started a Substack newsletter as a side hobby, as a way to promote my. I had written a novel, a Gothic novel, and I wanted to publish it. And so I originally was researching the best ways to publish my novel. And as I was doing that research, like going deep in as much as I could possibly learn, I was like, oh, well, okay, people aren't actually reading books. And in fact, 96% of books sell less than 1,000 copies. So if I even if I do all things right, get a literary agent, get a publishing house, and go the traditional route, I'm still looking at selling 1,000 copies or less and earning only 15% of the revenue from that. I'm not sure this is the best thing to do with my writing. And so that's why I started a Substack and started looking into serialization instead. And I serialized my novel as a newsletter. And so that was just me trying to like figure out what to do with my own writing. And then it was after that when I decided I wanted to write a utopian novel and I was going to research it in public, that then I was also laid off from my journalism job and was like, okay, well now I'm just going to go full time with this. So what does that mean and how am I going to organize this? And that's kind of what led to the current iteration of, I would say, my newsletter.
Okay, which means that you are a self-driven um, entrepreneurial writer and you earn money off your Substack subscription. Anything else you're earning revenue off of?
Yes, I do writing workshops as
Okay.
well for various organizations and also edit. I still work as a freelance editor every now and then. So this year will be different because this year is like my second year in business full time, and I will have the crowd fund as well as sponsorship revenue in addition to the my subscriber revenue. So three streams this year versus only like one last year, as well as some freelancing.
Okay, so multiple streams of revenue for the independent author entrepreneur is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it's radically different than being an employee. So you've shifted from being a contracted or an employee into this new independent author entrepreneur. What has changed for you? Have any beliefs, practices, focus areas changed for you in that transition?
I think the biggest shift is I had to start thinking, I was thinking of my work as like a side hobby passion project, and my journalism job was my job that made money. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do them both in one place. And that has meant reorienting myself from thinking of myself as a journalist and novelist to thinking of myself as a business owner. And so the way that I've articulated this to myself is to say, I am the founder of the Elysian, not just a writer of a newsletter. So it changes it changes what I do and how I think about my work.
Was there a sense of, I'm curious about, because changing identity is no little thing. Was there a sense of loss in that, as thinking of yourself as a journalist and a novelist to then a business owner? Was it an easy transition or was it mournful? Was it exciting? What was it like?
I'd say that my day-to-day life is better because I'm spending way more of my time writing than I was when I was working for full time as a journalist. Most of my work then was editing, right? So so in that way, my life is better. The different part is manufacturing my own income.
Mm.
So that's been something I've been figuring out. And my first year in business, it was I made $20,000 that year from
Woo,
subscription revenue alone. And then
that's
like
pretty
the
good.
second, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's not bad at all. And my second year in business, I made $40,000, and that was from subscriber revenue alone. And now I'm kind of in my third year, just starting my third year, and I'm looking to see that about that same amount of subscriber revenue, but again, the addition of the $50,000 crowd fund that I'm currently raising, and we're at $42,000 now. And then I have also have subscription revenue, or I mean, sponsorship revenue. So hopefully we should end up about, maybe 80 or 90,000 this year.
So yeah, it takes a while to substitute your job money from a entrepreneurial money, and but because you have overheads on top of that, it's not just money in your pocket. You got to pay for your hosting and subscriptions and
Yeah.
blah 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 blah. So
Yeah.
it's a tough road. Do you think it's the future
Yeah,
for a lot of people, though? Do you think that people will abandon their jobs to go down this entrepreneurial route? And I'm wondering about that because you've in your process of researching utopias, what are the models that have come up for you?
I don't think I don't think this is like the future of being a writer um, necessarily, because I think that no matter what, it's still hard to make it as a writer. That will always be the case. And just like it always has been in the past, you have to not just be a writer, but be an entrepreneurial writer to make money doing it. So it's just like a different skill set, I think. That being said, I think that it is the future of reading, where we follow independent authors that we like to follow rather than following like one publication necessarily
Yes.
that has a bunch of writers writing for it, where we trust individual voices better. And especially now that, AI is coming out, there's so much content coming at us in every direction. I think that that just is going to make people trust individuals more than anybody else. So I do think that that's the future of reading. Whether or not all of those writers are getting paid for their work,
Mm.
that's a different question.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that awareness. And I was sort of reflecting on the similar thing, like the demise, I should say, of contemporary media institutions, which have been so polarized and political that people are abandoning them. And in fact, a lot of the journalists from those independent media outlets have gone on to Substack, as an example, to set up their own platform. And like you said, they take an audience who trust them as the individual journalist and no longer trust the institution, which is kind of railroading perspectives into a narrow branch. And I think that is definitely an alternative reality for people to pursue, is that they can, the question of how do you find your truth and how do you get trusted information is central to a lot of this. The other thing I was thinking about, Alan, I'm curious about your perspective on this, is that what could this mean for us? That's a great futurist question when we no longer have the central media narrative, because in the past we had maybe one, two, three TV channels, say, for example, and everybody's, shared the same sort of news. So we're all having this similar experience about world events. And now that's kind of, it went polarized and now it's gone fractured. So if we're not sharing this common narrative or common shared lens or experience of the world, what could this mean for our interactions as humans and our understanding about how we come together to get things done, either in a business point of view or a community? So have you thought about that, what it means in terms of this fractured experience and not a shared experience anymore?
That's interesting because I think about this a lot in the context of fashion, because it used to be when I was younger, like in high school, um everybody kind of dressed the same. There was like a style, it was like the pants were the silhouette, the shirts were the silhouette, the sunglasses were big or they were small, but like it was like kind of uniform across people,
Yeah.
because we were all reading the same media, we had the same magazines, the same TV channels. And now when you walk around any city anywhere, you'll notice that there's like a million different styles out there, but like each individual group has the same style. So you might see like a group of five guys walking together and you're like, they're all dressed exactly the same. And then the next group is like three girls all dressed exactly the same next to each other, but like the two groups are dressed very differently from each other. And I think that fracturing, it is happening because we're all exposed to different things, different groups of people. We're watching different shows, we're, reading different things. And I think there's a lot of good to come from that because we all have very different personalities and we can kind of form our own little unique niche now. Whereas I don't think where things used to be more uniform. I mean, I'll just I'll use social media as an example of the good and bad to come from this, because the good, I always think like, what would it be like to be a teenager today? Because I was a teenager before social media. But I sometimes mourn that I didn't have social media in high school, because maybe I wouldn't have felt so alone if I was online and on TikTok, able to follow other kids who have liked acting like I did, like follow actors and Cirque du Soleil performers and Broadway singers. And like I was super into Broadway musicals and stuff as a teenager and like was in all the school plays. Like how cool would that have been to be exposed to, all the people that were super into that online, whereas in my real life, I was kind of like exposed to the cheerleaders and the jocks and people at my high school. So I think there's a lot of benefits to having that additional perspective, but there's also detriments too, in that every single person is experiencing life differently. And I think like misinformation can be a challenge, or at least understanding information differently can be a challenge.
I
I don't
agree.
know.
Disinformation and misinformation is definitely a challenge in this fractured environment. And as you're
Right,
talking about these little mini communities, it in some ways the tools and the networks allow us to find a community where we can belong, no matter how weird.
right.
In fact,
Exactly.
the more weirder and differentiated, the tighter the community in some ways, And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, you're my people, You like Broadway,
totally.
you're a writer and next journalist and an editor, and you like to travel around the world. Great. Let's have a little mini community around
Yes.
that. And
Yep.
there's a no cost barrier to that. You just get on platform and they kind of flock to that. I think there's value in that sense of community and belonging. And I think the challenge for us, and I don't think we're prepared for it as leaders, is how do we get those little mini communities to interact and coexist and cooperate and collaborate? Because if we try and organize our societies geographically, as an example, and I want to hear your perspective on utopians, having done all that research, how do we get this diverse bunch of mini communities together to produce a safe, viable community when everybody's got all these different agendas and so on? So coming to the question about your research around utopias, what have you discovered about utopian visions that can help maybe illuminate some of these challenges, if you have found anything?
Well, I do think there is such a thing as the wisdom of a crowd. I mean, that's like a common moniker now, but the idea of ask anybody to guess how many jelly beans are in this jar and they'll get it super wrong. But like if you ask 100 people how many jelly beans are in the jar, the average will be closer than any one person's guess. So like together when we are all involved in the decision making, we can make a wise choice because of the all of our different views. The problem is that right now we have like especially political systems that don't follow the wisdom of the crowds. I mean, in a representative democracy, for example, we're not all voting on whether or not we should have tariffs. We're voting on the president, the person that's coming into office who can make something happen or not make something happen, or work well with Congress or not work well with Congress, work well with leaders abroad. Like no matter what aspect of your life, whether it's like down to how much money your local park should get to like whether we should go to a war with a foreign country is like just decided by this one person at the top instead of like the wisdom of the crowd. So like I do think there are interesting utopian models around like direct governance and direct democracy. I think my favorite of the like utopian visions in this vein is the author Ada Palmer. She wrote this sci-fi series called Terra Ignota. And my favorite, there's like seven governments in the book, and they're all floating borderless governments. Anybody can join the government of their choice, no matter where they live. And one of them
Wow.
is called, yeah, one of the governments is called the Cousins. And it started out as an online platform to help women traveling together. Like any woman could just like reach out to the platform and be like, hey, I'm traveling in Tokyo. Like, what should I do? And all the other women would be like, you should come do this. Or, just help each other out. And eventually, like, the platform keeps expanding to somebody being like, hi, I live nearby and I need help raking my leaves, but like nobody's around. Like, can somebody help me? And then like the platform would be like, sure, we'll help. And so it was kind of this like online suggestion box, but eventually the things people were suggesting just kept getting more and more and more. And until eventually by the time of the book, it's, 3 million people or something, all contributing suggestions every day from like, you should fund this park needs more funding, the paint is peeling, to like, we need more money for healthcare, nobody can afford it. And they use like an AI to like tabulate all of the responses coming in to see where the most needs are and then to organize resources to go to those needs. And I'm like, this is so cool because there's no like person. It's just like a here's all the needs we have and like here's some resources to get those needs taken care of. And I just think that's really cool.
So my critical mind goes, right, how could this be hacked and sabotaged?
And it is in the book.
Okay, it does get hacked and sabotaged. Okay.
Yes.
So to the point, though, is that perhaps a bit more, rather than representative democracy, we have direct democracy where more of us have a say in the issues that matter to us. And
Yeah.
I think there's something really important. I mean, back in the day before we had telephones and before we had internet, representation was probably the best way of getting stuff done because we didn't have access to information, and so we had to put our trust in somebody who knew us, knew our region, knew our issues to go and then have discussions at a government level. That is not the case these days at all. So we have access to way more intelligence and information and misinformation. Therein is one of the chinks in the system. But it allows us to know a lot more than we have done previously. One of the things I'm interested, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I think that um, the media has significantly changed what representative democracy looks like because before we had like television and social media, it was like we were reading somebody's writings and deciding whether they were the best person to be a president like or like reading the newspaper like what they were saying and everything. I think the media has made it so that it's no longer like what they believe in or the things that they want to achieve, but that gets them elected. It's like how they look and whether they have the facade of like a leader and what they say on social media to people. And there's just like, it's more like being an actor than it is being like an actual representative.
I would argue, though, that's always been the case. I think back to Roman times, the propaganda machine was pretty heavy for senators who were trying to go for consul and get those privileged positions. Julius Caesar was pretty good on his propaganda machinery. He knew how to
That's
sway a
true.
crowd, and he was very careful about how he was depicted. And all those emperors with their coins, which is again
Yeah,
propaganda, presenting the image. Augustus was really good about that. He had a lot of busts made of himself as a younger version, even when he was in his 60s, put him across as like in his 20s. So I think propaganda
that's true.
has always been there. It's just a different format now and
Yes.
readily accessible. I think what I don't know, has it changed or not changed, is this collision. And I'm curious about this because you're starting to do your research for your next big labor. And we'll talk about the future of capital in just a second. The intersection of politics, business, and wealth. And what was the other one? I mean, those are the two ones that are coming to mind: politics and wealth, and maybe enterprise as colliding, and how those actually it is business. It's business and wealth and politics, the collision of those, and how they collude as opposed to just collide and inform one another. All right, so that's the topic. Let me actually pose a question. So tell us about your latest project, which is the future of capital.
Yeah, so I wanted to do this multi-year project. I'm calling it's a book called We Should Own the Economy. And the subtitle is A Vision for the Future of Capitalism and the World. And the concept for the book is essentially that ownership is power. If you own a business, you are wealthy and you have power that you can wield. If you in a representative democracy, we're supposed to own the government and it's supposed to be representing us. And so, but I wanted to start with the question of capital because this was something that a lot of thinkers during the Enlightenment were trying to figure out. I think we had this idea that capital would create, like private ownership of capital would create a lot of wealth and prosperity. This is Smith's work. The problem is, and it did, private ownership of capital created a lot of wealth and prosperity. And if you own a business or if you own a house or real estate or you own investments, your wealth is growing over time and you can buy more businesses and more real estate and more investments. And I think now we're kind of hitting a breaking point where, 92% of the stock market in the US is owned by 10% of the top 10 12%. 10 is it? The wealthiest 10% of the country. So when we keep saying things like, "Oh, the economy is doing well, the economy is doing well, so we should all be doing well," we're actually just saying, "No, the economy is doing well, so it's benefiting like a small portion who are
Mm,
already
mm,
well off, and it's not really benefiting the average person, even though it used to." So, kind of in recent decades, we've had this consolidation of wealth, and what that's created is a consolidation of power, where people with the money can influence our politics, economics, nearly everything. And I think it's really eroding democracy.
yeah. And that's sort of the virtuous, vicious cycle. It's virtuous that becomes vicious in terms of if you have a little bit of capital, you can create wealth through your business, reinvest it, and that sort of bubble grows for you as the capital business owner. And then you start to look at politics and rules and regulations, the systems that can sort of help liberate or accentuate or enable that whole little whirly devil that you've got going on there with your wealth creation. And so I think that's where the nexus of influence comes in the politics piece. I've got money. I want to make sure I continue to make money and build wealth. Therefore, I want to make sure that the legislation and the infrastructure and the systems serve that. And therefore, I get involved in that. And sort of, you certainly saw that in this latest election, is how much business is getting behind the Trump campaign to ensure that the legislation and systems support that nexus. And I think you're right. Like the view that capital, like market economy, will create wealth and we'll all be better off is yes, and a little bit. We
Yes.
have, our lives have definitely improved over the last 50 years, and it's uneven. Like the
Right.
uneven distribution, I think is part of the problem. It's ballooning at one end and just kind of middling along at the other end. So the system is not a perfect figure of eight, if you like. It's not that
Right.
virtuous cycle. It's kind of this blobby thing where the big blob on one side gets bigger and the other tail of it gets really shrinky and struggling. And I think that's what we need to address in our utopian visions, is how do we rein in, or how do we redistribute, how do we constrain or redistribute the wealth and constrain the power mongering. I think those two things go hand in hand, are two essential questions to consider. What are you
Yes.
thinking along those lines?
Yeah, so I wanted to write a book solving that problem. And I think we
Woo.
already, the thing is, we already have the solutions. We have working case studies. For example, if you think about a company, the executives of the company are earning the bulk of their income in stocks in the company. They have equity in the company. So when the company does well, their stocks grow in value, whereas most of the people at a company are earning a salary. So while the CEO makes $1 million next year and $2 million the next year and $3 million the next year, the employee is just making like $60,000 this year, $60,000 next year, $60,000 the year after
Mm,
that. So we have this problem where the wealth just remains static. The very easy solve here is to give everybody equity in the company, not just the executives, right? So if and at employee-owned companies, this is how it works. The founder and the executives might get 10 times more equity every year than somebody who works at the very bottom, but they all are earning equity in the company. So when the company grows exponentially, even the guy at the bottom is earning wealth exponentially rather than a static salary.
mm,
The employee ownership designation is I think I want to say it started in like the 70s in the US, but the thing is it's still very small. There's only like 6,000 employee-owned companies in the US. And the reason is that there are still regulatory structures that make it difficult to become an employee-owned company. It's also expensive to become an employee-owned company. It's harder to raise money because you can't get the same like traditional loans or investment as you can if you're a non-traditional company.
mm,
There are some incentives, like for example, in the US or in the UK, You can have an employee ownership trust. And if you are a founder of a company and you sell your business to employees, you can get that income tax free. So it's actually more beneficial for you to sell your company to employees for tax purposes than it is to sell to a big company. So like those kind of incentives help, but we still need to like unravel some of the regulatory hurdles that are keeping them from reaching mass appeal and adoptability.
Why do
So
you
that's kind of what I want to write about.
Okay. And con I'm curious about why would there be regulatory hurdles put in against these employee-owned organizations? Is there any sort of rationale behind that, or is it just a legacy of a clunky system?
Yeah, I think it's just a legacy of the clunky system. It's like when things started to go into place, they worked in a certain way, and then it's just you have to undo that over time.
Right.
The way the old laws are worded and everything. And like there's some policy that is just it's just kind of like crazy because it just defines the company based on its ability to have shareholders or something, which makes it difficult to if you have 100 shareholders rather than just like five to do that. So yeah, so there's just it's really kind of just reducing friction that right now the system's kind of clunky.
Okay. So the other thing I want to put on the table too is that going to a collectivist approach to business is quite a different thing than the triangle version of a business where you have the founder, the visionary, the CEO in charge of everything and the minions carrying out. So that's the triangle business. And what you're talking about in terms of employee owned business is a circle business where it's a collectivist thing. There's still a management structure. I understand that. Do you think there needs to be a shift in values to move from one to the other? Or are
Yeah,
people able to easily adapt?
I don't think we can change people's values. So I think we're better off changing the law to make it work in their own self-interest. The reason why somebody sells their company to a big company or goes public on the stock market is because they'll get rich doing. They should get just as rich selling to their employees as they do selling to the stock market. I think
Okay. So you're
as
going
so
for
long as
like
it's
baseline greed, and we just talk to that as opposed to trying to change values
not
as, in
necess
aspirational
not
way.
not necessarily greed, but incentivizing our own selfish behaviors to work to the benefit of everyone.
Maybe that's just pragmatic and realistic as opposed to pessimistic. Um, okay. And the other thing I'd encourage you or encourage us all to think about too is that this sounds like a utopian thing. Everybody benefits from the success of the company. There's still going to be power games at play in those types of businesses, and we've seen that
Yep.
in DAOs. The what are they called? Digitally autonomous organizations. Is that some, that's not
Just decentralized
oh,
autonomous
I knew the
organizations.
D was wrong.
Yeah.
Decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. And there's still power games at play in those things, which are meant to squash any hierarchy and make it a collectivist thing. What's your take on power? I mean, you said earlier that ownership is power, and yet people can still show up and play power games. What are you thinking around that stuff?
Power needs to be decentralized because the thing is when you have something that's really, really big and powerful, um, it just wants to keep getting more big and more powerful. And you see this with like every emperor who ever conquered everything. It's just like, oh, I need the next big thing. Um, and when you have a really, really big thing like Rome or the US, it's really easy to take it over, the whole thing, because you already have this big, powerful thing and just, oh, now I'm going to take it from you and I'm going to be the big, powerful thing and we'll just keep making it bigger and more powerful. It needs to have checks. The power needs to have checks on it coming from every possible angle. And I think that if I do, I do think that a world of like a bunch of small powers rather than a few big powers would like be better. Because like if you
I
think about
mhm.
when you think about like the only reason why any country has to have nuclear weapons is because you have to be bigger than the country that currently has the most nuclear weapons so that you could
Yeah,
always take them out, right?
yeah,
If every country is small, they have to have much less to be bigger than the next guy.
That's true. And that's when you start building alliances, and then the whole I'm bigger than you
Right.
thing comes into play.
Yeah.
So there's elements of that, this sort of posturing and a collegiality, which is defense and then offense. So there's risks all the time. I don't think that we can get one system and say we've managed to decentralize power and put checks on it. We're all good, because there's psychopaths out there and they will work to work whatever system you've got. And this is the research
Yep.
I've done for my
It's true.
recent book, Power Games, is that I want to believe the best in people. And then in my research, there are just some really unnice people. And those are
Yeah.
psychopaths who don't have compassion or empathy and are out to ruthlessly get to the top of the pyramid. Even if it's a tiny flat pyramid, they still want to get to the top and manipulate people and take whatever they can
Yep.
for themselves. And
This is true.
sucks. It really
That
sucks.
suck.
I want everybody to be nice and look after each other. That's my
Yeah.
like utopian leadership vision for the world. And sadly, I
Me
don't
too.
think, yeah, I know we want that world. And there's other people who want that world too. And, there's also different utopian visions. Is like, well, let's get all those people together on an island and just, retreat so we can actually live out that communist hippie agenda. And then those communities have
Those
power
go
games and
wrong. Yep. Those always go wrong.
right. So I'm really looking forward to the book now and figuring out is can we troubleshoot this based on all of our past experiences and play out all the possible things that could go wrong and get it as effective as we can.
Just to
Um,
be clear, I don't plan on solving world peace.
you said,
Only,
your vision for a better
only
world,
I'm just trying to make a difference where I can by changing how wealth is owned.
and that's no little thing. Like that will
Yes.
change the world if we redistribute
Yes.
wealth in that way.
Right.
Okay. Uh, right. I'm just looking at my questions now because I'm like,
Saving the world is too much work.
yeah, I know. It's like, okay, just take pause, take a breath, saving the
Yeah.
world. Maybe now is a good time for the fast three. Are you ready?
Oh, sure.
Okay, let's change track completely. Phew, not saving the world. Let's just go for fast three. These are more straightforward. All right, number one, what is the future technology you want most right now?
Teleportation.
That is the number one most popular answer.
Yeah.
We haven't solved travel.
No
Okay.
brainer.
Number two, best tip you ever got for leadership.
I don't know the answer. Will you give me a tip? I could use all the tips I could get.
Best tip for leadership. Okay. I haven't been asked to share a tip for leadership before. Yes. Be humble and be curious. And that's the best antidote against hubris, which is the gateway to power games. So I would start there, be humble and curious. And that you know nothing is a great paraphrase of Aristotle and a number of different luminaries. So that's my tip for you.
Yeah. I love that.
All right. Number three, what are you reading or listening to right now? Probably a lot, given that you're researching your book.
Let's look at my Kindle library. Yeah. Right now I'm reading a fantasy novel called River Enchanted. I'm also reading Ezra Klein's new book, Abundance, and Derek Thompson. I'm reading the Utopian novel Era One.
Okay. I want to read. Thank you. That was the fast three. And it was pretty fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes I respond in like long soliloquies. So I managed to contain myself, which is good. Utopia. So I want to come back to that actually, because that started you on the Substack journey and this whole new broad landscape for yourself. Why utopia and not dystopia?
I don't even have to answer that.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want a dystopian future. Nobody wants a dystopian future. We want a utopian future. Unfortunately, um, literally all of the books are dystopian,
Yeah.
and all of our media is dystopian. You look at the front page of any publication, it's like, here's all the things wrong with the world. And if the only options available to us are all the bad ones and how things could go wrong, then that's the only way we'll see things. We need a better vision for the future. We need utopian fiction, and we need to see the things that are going right. It's like one of my favorite newsletters is Fix the News, and it's literally a list of all the best news that has happened in the world. And it's things you never hear about. So we're all sitting here just thinking the world is ending, and meanwhile, like major progress is being made around the world. And I just think I think it's really hindering us, and I think it's actually the number one problem with humanity right now is because we literally can only see a bleak future. And I think it's becoming like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, it's weird because we're even like going towards it. We're like, oh wow, isn't it so cool? These like movies with AI taking the world. Like, what if we actually like invent AI that does that? Or like what if we make humanoid robots that can like live in our house and like they might be able to be like reprogrammed to use in a bad way, but like that's fine. Like well, we can see things in a better way. Like, for example, Star Wars has great robots, but imagine robots being very helpful to humans. It would be nice to have more films like that so we could see a positive use for that technology, um, or even just like I really love Taika Waititi's independent films. And he has one called The Hunt for the Wilder People, and it's about like a foster boy who gets like taken into a foster home. And when I was watching it the first time, I thought, wow, this is so crazy because the only time I've ever seen a foster kid in any film or anything, it's like that kid is horribly depressed, horribly messed up, completely traumatized, has like no possible good thing that can happen to him. And here's this movie that like frames this foster kid as a hero and like the is like totally happy and well adjusted and is supported by this family. And you're like, wow, like how would things be different if a foster kid could see themselves on screen as like a happy, well-adjusted person? Um, like we need better like visions we can look to. So yes, I'm very into trying to find the good and to find solutions and think through ways that the future can be better, not worse.
Thank you. I'm so glad I asked that question. And I'm so glad you answered it. And I think that's right. You know, we're as humans, we're wired as threat detectors. That's our natural inclination because that's our survival mode. And yet, can we not get out of survival mode and go towards what could be better? How can we craft that? And I think that's my experience in working with leaders too. Everybody's very easy to pinpoint the problems that are happening around them, as opposed to when you drill and keep asking what's going right. And if this problem is fixed, what's beyond that? People really struggle with actually thinking about that because it's like, oh, I know I have like a chisel in my head and that's all I can think about right now. I'm like, well, if the chisel in your head wasn't there, what would that be like? And it's like, well, I don't know because this chisel, like, that's good beyond the chisel. It's gone. What could you move towards
Yeah,
then?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So no more chisels in the head. Practice utopian vision. And it's funny that you say, oh, there's so much dystopian. Yeah, I just wrote 4 dystopian novels. And I'm going to be finishing the 5th one with a utopian version of it. So I've committed, like, I got sad just writing the whole book series, going, oh my God, this is, things keep just going from bad to bad. What if we could solve some of these issues and get these people in a better place? So that's my commitment to you, Al. Like my last book in the Gaia series will be a utopian vision. There's still going to be stuff going wrong, but that we're going to be leaving on a
Yeah.
positive foot.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of children's movies are more utopian in scope. It's just like you're kind of goes downhill once you hit adulthood.
Well, they didn't used to be, right? Like the Little Mermaid, the original version of that story is tragic. So I
Right.
think,
And the
there's
old fairy tales were bad, really
yeah.
dystopian.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because they meant to teach kids to look out and beware. So again,
Right.
reinforcing the threat
Survival.
detector, survival, teach moral lessons. Um, but I'm sure that, like, I haven't immersed myself much in Disney and those kind of movies these days. I think there's some maybe you have, maybe there's some more pro utopian comments or well, you just mentioned one of the stories that you saw, Waitiki, and his vision of this very positive, self-empowered individual foster kid who can take the world by storm. So maybe we're swinging back to that. Maybe movies and story has a purpose now to help bolster our humanity and remind us that we have good in us and that the future can be good.
Yeah. I mean, I think another one is Schitt's Creek. Did you watch that one?
Oh my God, so funny. Yeah.
So good. But I think they had such a positive worldview around none of these characters. Like these characters are all going through a hard time, but none of it is traumatizing. Everybody is growing. Everybody can like find happiness and well-being. And there's, I mean, they don't present the LGBTQ characters with any kind of struggle. It's just like a accepted, happy, normal part of the culture. And I think that just goes a long way when you can see like even a rich family becoming really poor, you can kind of like see the good in humanity.
I'm going to think about that because I had not thought about Schitt's Creek in that context, but now I will ponder that a little bit and do some revisionist thinking around it. I like that. I'm going to keep looking for examples of that. And I'm so grateful for you who help steer audiences and readers into thinking this way. So, oh my God, that went way longer than I anticipated. Please, Elle, tell us where people can find out more about your Substack as well as your latest book project.
Yeah, so my Substack is called the Elysian. The website is elysian.press. And if
Okay.
you go there, you can find my We Should in the Future, We Should Only Economy book. It's the top post.
Okay. And with the book, is there a close off date for when people can invest, or is it going to stay open as you continue to go through the project?
Once we reach $50,000,
Yep.
I will open the round and then pretty soon after close it.
Okay.
So right now we're at about 42,000. So we've got $8,000 left to go. And then I will open the round and close it. And then I will just be publishing the book online in cases and starting to assemble it.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that this is a different way of doing book publishing again, which is different to something like Kickstarter, which is where people they stake their money in the project, hoping to get it published, and they get goods and services as a result of that. It's different to what you're proposing, which is an investment. So you invest and hopefully get returns from that, which is
Yeah.
a very different model. Can you tell me a little bit about why you decided to go that way instead of Kickstarter?
Yeah, so the book is about creating more owners of the economy. So I wanted to be able to create owners in the book. So I wanted to, and I wanted to allow readers to invest in the book and then earn a share of the profits when it sells. It's kind of how publishing works. But they don't actually invest in their book. They give you an advance on your earnings. So like this is what
Yeah.
you might eventually earn.
Mm,
So it's like a loan they're giving you
mm.
of your future income. And then eventually when it sells, they get 75% of the earnings
Yeah.
between your literary agent and the publishing house. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna make my readers my publisher. They can invest in the book. They can actually earn when the book does well. And I can be part of it as I'm writing it. Because I'll be writing it live on my Substack. People can comment. My investors all get special access to vote in the project and participate in the direction it goes and moving some researching. So when it comes out, it will be a book that works for the investors and
I
brings
love
value
it.
to them.
It's such a brilliant idea. Model what you
Thanks.
aspire to propose in the book, which is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Al, this has
Thanks for being
been,
an investor.
oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I should declare that up front. I put my hand in my pocket and am investing in the project because I want this thing to come off because I think it's add huge value to people and businesses in the future. And well, basically that. And B, I like you and I like your work.
Thank you.
Oh,
I
Elle,
appreciate that. Thanks,
you're
so.
welcome. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for the work that you do and for being a leading light for writers and business people and utopian visionaries.
Love it. Thank you so much.
On Read to Lead this week, I have two books to recommend. Of course, the first one is dun, 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 Power Games, A Leader's Guide to Office Politics and Drama-Free collaboration. And this is launching soon on Kickstarter, 19th of May. And when you get it into your hot little hands, you will discover things like the 4 spheres of power and how you can build positive active power for yourself in those 4 spheres. You will learn about the high performing team bicycle. So the 5 things you need to keep into consideration to build effective shared power in teams. And the third element is all looking about how power is controlled, manifested, and harnessed across organizations so you can create transparent systems that avoid a lot of the power games that occur. So if you've ever been a victim of manipulation, sidelining, undermining, malignant gossip, you name it, those are power games that we can actually learn to decipher and to deal with our counter moves, as well as enabling and affecting positive power in our lives. So that's book number 1, Power Games. And the second one is Simon Dowling's book, Work With Me. Work With Me. And the subtitle is How to Get People to Buy Into Your Ideas. Simon is also an expert on teams and team collaboration. I love his style. He's very funny. He's a great human. And his book is a nice little delight to complement any work that you're doing in teams. So those are my recommendations. Work With Me and Power Games. That's it for the show this week. Thank you so much for listening in. I guess the big key exciting things for you to keep in mind is the Kickstarter campaign for Power Games is going live, and make sure you get on board. We have a giveaway involved with that, so you can have a chance to win the digital edition of the book, both an ebook, an audiobook, the workbook, and the 22 worksheets that go alongside of that. We'll pull names out of the hat on the 26th of May, 2025. The link is in the show note of where you can join the campaign. You can follow the campaign, you can pledge, and also you can repost to your socials and tag me in. You get to go in the draw for the giveaway. So that's all happening, which is pretty exciting. The other interesting tidbit, which might be of use to you, is that I have started a Substack. I'm migrating all my content there. So I'll be publishing through Substack everything to do with the podcast, to my books, to my articles, etc. And it's a great way to have conversations with other like-minded leaders about the topics that matter to you. So in the meantime, live well, lead with grace, lead in service.